Welcome back to the channel. As we're about to enter Shoal Pass along the Strait of Magellan, it seems like a good chance to talk about the downsizing process you have to go through in order to start a full-time travel lifestyle. So come along for the journey as we see part of the ship and some of the scenery and talk about the delightful task of downsizing your life. My name is Rick, and this is Finding My Retirement. Lots of people think full-time travel is way too expensive, but they're thinking of the cost of adding a vacation on top of their cost of living at home. The key to a full-time travel lifestyle is downsizing your home footprint as much as physically possible, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, let's talk for a minute about why we downsize to become full-time travelers. Is it to get rid of most of your stuff? Not really. The purpose of downsizing is to minimize your economic footprint in your home country. So if you've got a friend with a garage or a storage unit and you can leave some of your stuff, by all means keep it. What you're trying to do is find a way to reduce the amount of stuff you have in your home country to the bare minimum financial cost. So no car payment, no car insurance, no rent, no mortgage payment, no giant storage unit that's $500 a month. That's the goal of downsizing. You don't actually need to get rid of all your stuff. You have to get rid of the stuff that actually costs you money to keep while you're traveling the world. Because again, what makes travel so expensive to most people is that it's a vacation that has costs layered on top of the cost of their day-to-day life. So when you go away to Italy for 10 days, you're still paying your mortgage, and you're still paying your car payment, and you're still paying all your insurance and all of the other things that you're paying back home. And you have the added cost of the trip on top of that. When you travel full-time, you want to eliminate all those daily costs that you have at home and transfer the money that you spend on your daily costs back home and use that for your travel costs. That's how you make full-time travel affordable. So keep that in mind when we start talking about the downsizing process, that it's not really about just getting rid of the stuff. It's about getting rid of the economic cost at home, however that happens. At this point, you may be asking yourself, how long is this downsizing process going to take? Well, if you're watching this video, there's a pretty good chance you've also watched several other videos on the subject, and you've probably seen someone talking about how they got rid of everything they owned down to a couple of backpacks in 30 days and left the road with just the backpack on their back. Can it happen? Sure, I suppose it can happen. Could we do it? Absolutely not. We probably spent 2 years on this process, and we still didn't get it all right. You're gonna need to think about what you need to keep, what you don't need to keep, what you can have a friend keep for you, what you can sell, and how you, again, minimize your economic footprint in the United States or wherever your permanent home is. So this is a whole process. We probably spent the better part of a year planning what we were going to do, and then another year getting rid of our stuff. The rest of this video, Stacy involved too, we're gonna talk about the steps we took and how we actually accomplished it. But it was a big process, a little bit depressing at times, also a little bit satisfying to see the results as we were getting rid of most of our stuff. Okay, so here we are at breakfast, and I've caught Stacy, and I'm going to ask her for her overall quick summary of what she thought of the downsizing process.
Well, it's a pain in the butt is what it is. It's crazy. It is freeing, though, once you've done it.
So what do you need to figure out? First, you got to figure out if you have anything that's truly priceless or irreplaceable, because those could take some time. You've got to find a place to store it, someone to give it to, a way to sell it, or something to do with it. So those priceless, truly one-of-a-kind items has got to be a focus. We're going to talk about that and what we did with some of those things. Then you got to talk about photos and collections and artifacts and mementos and how you're going to handle those things. We'll talk about that. You got to talk about clothes. Clothes isn't a big one. Clothes, shoes. Then just simple things like toiletries and just all the cosmetics and all the stuff you have. My wife will talk a little bit about jewelry. So there's a whole bunch of categories to talk about, leaving aside things like cars and houses and those other big ticket items. So anyway, let's get on with the discussion. Okay, so what are you going to travel with? A lot of people talk about backpacks only or carry-ons only. We are right now in 2 full-size suitcases, 2 carry-on size bags, and 2 personal items. And we'd like to get down one more, but the reality is we've got most of what we have, most of what we still own with us, including clothes for 95-degree weather and clothes for today where it's freezing cold and I've got most of my layers on. So when you start to think about how you're going to pack and what you're going to take with you, you have to be realistic, because the reality is that the dream of traveling out of a backpack is great, and maybe you can do it, but we certainly can't. My goal is to get us down to 1 checked bag as opposed to 2, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, because we're stretching just to cram everything into the bags we have and stay under the weight limit. Because when you're traveling full time and you're planning for, bathing suit weather and polar weather and everything in between, nice clothes for when you need nice clothes, you need a few pairs of shoes, and it's not going on vacation. You're not on vacation. You're traveling full time, and when you downsize, the more you can do it, the better, but you got to be realistic and you got to carry your life with you on the road. So one thing you'll need to figure out is if you have any priceless or irreplaceable items that you simply can't get rid of. And those are the things that may take a long time to figure out, especially if you don't have friends or family you can leave them with. We had a couple of things that fell into this category. I have a violin from the 18th century that belonged to my grandfather and is something that has to stay in the family, and I've had it for years, but didn't want to put it in storage and didn't want to get rid of it, so I talked my sister into taking that. We also have a painting that we got in Ez on our honeymoon, and it's not worth a lot of money, but it's very important to us, and it's one of our only original pieces of art. So that is in our storage space up in our garage in Vancouver. But one of the things as you start this process is to do your inventory and figure out those one-of-a-kind, priceless, unique things that you simply can't part with, and start coming up with a plan for all of those things. So let's talk a little bit about jewelry. The good news about jewelry is it doesn't take up a lot of space, so we don't need to get rid of too much of it, but you also did have to figure out what you were taking with us and what you were doing with the rest of it. So talk about jewelry a bit.
All right, so for me, it wasn't so bad because I have a lot of jewelry, but not very many expensive pieces. So most of my jewelry is just costume jewelry, not sentimental, kind of easy to get rid of. I mean, I say that with a grain of salt. Nothing's easy to get rid of when you're used to having it. But we wound up, I had earrings from my wedding that we put in a safe deposit box. I have a very special necklace that my husband made for me that has my birthstone, my mom's birthstone, and my daughter's birthstone. I wear that almost every day, so that came with me, obviously. My wedding ring, my engagement ring. I just took a little bit of everything. First, I went through my jewelry, and anything old and tarnished or whatever, I got rid of. I even found a lot of earrings and stuff that I only had one of, so those were pretty easy to get rid of. But there are some pieces of jewelry I did keep in storage. I have a jewelry case that's probably about this tall and, this round, that has 3 different layers. One I have some necklaces in, one I have some earrings in, and one I have rings in. And if it doesn't fit in there, it doesn't come with me. So if I do get something new, I have to get rid of something old. I probably should whittle that down even more, but it's hard. So that's where we're at with jewelry.
So I'm going to talk for a minute about what I did with my clothes. Ultimately, most of my clothes did not come with me because I switched to merino wool and have a very limited wardrobe with me. I think I have 4 short sleeve shirts and 2 long sleeve shirts and 2 pairs of pants, 1 pair of jeans, and a few pairs of shorts. So I don't have much with me, but in terms of clothes, for about a year, about every 2 months I got rid of half of what I owned. And that was sort of my process. It was amazing how many clothes you accumulate over a lot of years. We lived in the same house for 25 years. So every 2 months I got rid of half of what I owned and then did it again and again and again. And by the time we were ready to leave, I was hopefully down to just a few things that I couldn't part with that I wanted to keep and a few things to take with me. And otherwise, everything was eventually gone.
It was a major challenge because we're not traveling just to sunny locations or just to cold locations. So I needed some of each. I think I did 4 long sleeve shirts and 4, maybe 5 short sleeve shirts, jeans, 1 pair of shorts because I hate wearing shorts. And I think that other than underwear and socks, and that's pretty much where I landed. And it's not, I did bring a pair of PJs too, but it's not a lot of clothes. My closet was filled to the brim. Every couple of weeks I would take more stuff out, until my closet was this much clothing in it, which I thought, great. Still too much. So I had to get rid of even more stuff. I saved a few things that were more sentimental. They're up in our storage in Washington in the house. So just little things that I probably won't wear again, but I couldn't get rid of.
If you've made it this far and you're getting any value out of this video, please like and subscribe to our channel. We're a brand new channel and it would really help us out and it doesn't cost you anything. Thanks a lot. So you have more than you just talked about though. You have dresses, you have bathing suits, jackets, sweatshirts.
Yeah.
What else did you bring?
I have my warm jacket which is my fuzzy jacket. I have this sweatshirt that's for warmth, that's it. I have some things to layer, so I have thermal stuff I can layer over under my shirts and stuff if we get to really cold temperatures. I have some bathing suits. I think I have 2 bathing suits with me. I do have a couple dresses. I have
4, I think.
I think I have 4. I have 2 black ones, so I could probably get rid of one, and a blue one, and one that's really great if it gets wet. So that one I'm not getting rid of. That one dries so fast. But I have also like 3 dressier shirts. 4. I have 4. I don't need them. I have yet to wear one of them. I should probably keep one and the rest can go. So I still have to whittle down even more. So it's really hard, but I feel like I have nothing, but I still have to get rid of more stuff.
How about shoes?
I have my slip-in shoes. I have my, what I call waffle stompers, but those are the ones if we go hiking or if it's wet, muddy terrain or something, I'm gonna need those. And then I have a pair of dressy tennies, dressy tennies. They're white Skechers slip-ins that have little fake gems on them. So they're a little blingy, and I have a pair of kind of slides, slip-ins that are sandally that are the same as the white tennis shoes. So I have 4 pair of shoes.
The wedges.
Oh God, I have the wedges too. I forgot about those. Those are supposed to be for Jamaica though.
Okay, so you've talked about what you have. Are there things that you don't have that you feel like you need, and other things that you have that you don't need?
I feel like I would love to have more shirts because I like having options, and just wearing the same 4 shirts over and over again is really boring. But obviously that's not an option. I have to only have a few things. I can't think of anything that I wish I had. I haven't missed something in particular. I haven't been like, oh God, I wish I had that with me today. I haven't had that issue.
Okay, let's talk about your big stuff, your furniture, your lamps, the stuff that you clearly can't take with you and you probably don't want to store. So look around your house, add up the cost of what you think it's all worth, not what you paid for it, but what you think it's worth when you sell it. Now, divide that number in half. Okay. Divide that number in half again. And it's probably still a lot more than it's worth because people don't want your stuff. We tried to sell what we could. We listed things on Facebook Marketplace. We listed things on OfferUp. We talked to friends and family. We did what we could. I think we sold 3 or 4 things total. It's just hard to sell things. So if you are 2 or 3 years away from needing to downsize, my best advice for you is start listing things on Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp and any other selling marketplace you want to now, Craigslist, wherever you want to sell things, start listing things now. It doesn't matter what it is or how much it is or how much you get, because what you want is to develop a seller rating so that when you start listing a lot of things, people see that you've got a good rating and they'll actually click on your stuff, because we listed things and it was just crickets. We got no responses for most of what we listed. We lowered the price, we lowered the price, we lowered the price. We never got responses. So we ended up donating a lot of our stuff. We ended up sending way too much of it to the dump. So this is a process you're going to need to spend time on and really focus on. But again, if you really are intent on selling your stuff, 1, keep your expectations low because prices are not going to be high. And if you can get a few bucks, at least it's better than donating it. But also, you need to take the time to do it and start the process as early as you can. And like I said, if you can develop that reputation and get a seller rating early, it's going to help you tremendously. My cousin sold all kinds of things on Facebook Marketplace. We weren't able to sell hardly anything. So the sad reality is your kids probably don't want your stuff. Nobody wants your stuff, and it really isn't worth anything. And unless you're going to spend money to store it, you simply have to get rid of it. So go through the process, as painful as it is, and keep your expectations as low as you can.
Okay, that's probably the easiest subject, which sounds weird, but the photo albums, I used to scrapbook, so I made all these different photo albums, so actual pictures. So it was kind of tough for me to let them go, but you got to look at it like my kids aren't going to want them. And in this day and age, every photo could be digital, so it's all online. So it wasn't like I was getting rid of the stuff. Obviously, my time and effort, that was going away. But I still had all the photos, which was what obviously is important. So that was probably easier to let go of. But really, anything you're letting go of, you got to think, do my kids really want this? And the answer usually is going to be no. So that's where we started. So with my scrapbooking, a lot of the time I would do it by year, but sometimes that would turn into 2, maybe 3 albums because I can't let go. Never 4. Don't put up 4 fingers. Never 4. But it was really hard because I had a hard time letting go of the pictures. So if I had 2 or 3 photo albums for 1 year, we had to figure out what we wanted to keep and condense it down to 1 photo album. So we actually did keep a few just for us for when we're old and gray and sitting at home looking at the photo albums. So we had to go through all of them. And we're talking 20 plus years of photo albums, and then make sure we didn't have more than 1 per year. Our wedding album would have been really, really hard to let go of, which we didn't let go of it, but we will eventually. But our photographer retired, so she actually offered us the negatives. So we got those all digitally put on the computer, and we can recreate anything we want. So all the other photo albums with the scrapbooking I did, we had to just choose and condense it down into 1 per year, which we did save. Again, my kids probably won't ever want it. We'll probably just get rid of them. But for now, we do have 1 year photo albums. So that was helpful, but still hard to let go of.
So the other thing to talk about with the photo albums in particular is most of the albums when our kids were born, they were all digital photos. So the scrapbooking aspect of it that my wife spent about 1,000 hours a year on, we wanted to keep some of that. So we did keep 1 album per year, but the photos themselves are all digital, which is great. But when we look back at the older albums, like when we were kids, those albums were all real pictures. There were no digital copies. And then when I had some pictures of my parents' generation, again, those are no digitals of any of that. So we did 2 things. We bought a very nice flatbed scanner. I scanned thousands of pictures and documents and other things, but we also sent a bunch of photos and slides in to be scanned. So we tried to digitize all the old photos we had, which meant boxes of photos that we just went through scanning one by one and taking albums, the old albums, and pulling them apart to get to the photos so we could scan them so that we do have digital copies of everything. So that was sort of our solution, is to create 1 photo album per year for the kids, and those are stored up in our garage up in Washington, and then digitize everything else, and then the rest of it, which was 80% of it, ended up in the trash. And it was hard, but like Stacy said, you know, our kids aren't going to want that stuff, and so it was time to just keep the little bit we wanted and digitize it so we would have it and get rid of the rest of it. Okay, let's talk for a minute about our secret weapon in this process. We said we sold our house, and we did, but we also bought a rental property in Vancouver, Washington. Now, we did that for 2 primary reasons. One, someday we'd like to come back to the United States, and we think we might settle down there, and we didn't want to be completely out of the housing market. But the primary reason we did it was because if we want to get a visa somewhere, a full-time visa somewhere, a lot of times you need to show income, and having a property that we can use as a rental property generates rental income for us, which could be really important if we want to get a 1-year visa somewhere. But there was another benefit when we did it. We were able to get something with a 3-car garage, and we closed off one of the garages and stored our stuff there. So when we were looking for properties, I was specifically looking for properties with a 3-car garage, preferably 2 across and then a tandem space behind. And that's what we were able to find. And so we actually stored some furniture and the photo albums we've talked about and some other things that we simply couldn't part with. We stored them in the tandem garage space and then built a temporary wall. So when we rented the house, we've rented it as a 2-car garage, and we basically have a free storage unit behind. It doesn't really affect the rental value of the property very much, if any, and it gives us free storage. So that was kind of our secret weapon to the downsizing process, was finding that rental property with a 3-car garage that we could use one of the slots for our stuff and still rent it as a 2-car garage. Let's talk about your house for a minute. Do you actually have to sell your house as part of the downsizing process? The obvious answer is no, you don't have to sell your house. But I think there's at least 2 circumstances where you're going to want to sell your house. The first is if, like us, you're retiring early and you have a lot of equity in your house and you plan to live on that equity until you reach full retirement. Well, in that case, obviously selling the house is the right answer. But there's another time when I think it's important to sell your house. Remember what we talked about earlier. The goal isn't to reduce your physical footprint necessarily, is to reduce your economic footprint. And if your house has a big mortgage, big HOA dues, property insurance, taxes, utilities, and you can't find a way to offset those costs through rental income, then it's probably a good idea to sell your house and eliminate that expense from your economic footprint. The other thing we haven't talked about is technology items, and that takes up more space than you'd realize. Stacy's traveling with just her MacBook Pro, but I'm still traveling with an actual computer. I've got a Mac Mini with double external monitor and a full-size keyboard and a mouse. I'm trying to get rid of it and figure out how to go to a laptop, but I've always worked with multiple screens, and I still do a lot of Excel spreadsheets and other things where I'm using multiple screens, and I can't imagine just working on a small laptop screen. So the technology takes up room that you don't expect. I've got a mini razor, and I've got other things that just, it's not only takes up room, but it's heavy. And then we've got the camera equipment. We've got the camera we're filming on now. We've got a Fuji XS20. I got down to one lens, which just makes me sick at times. I had to leave my good prime lenses at home. I've just got a 16-300, which is not particularly sharp, but it's versatile. So we're taking our pictures and our videos with one camera, and then the second camera, and then our two phones. We've also got a full-size tripod, a mini tripod, the equipment to clean the cameras. It really takes up more room than you'd think. And again, it's not just the room, it's the weight. When you get to places where every pound or kilogram count, the weight of the technology stuff really starts to add up. So here we are at the Pyeongtaek Glacier. So if you're struggling with your downsizing process, keep in mind what you're doing it for. It's for views like this. We would not be here if we had not gone through that painful process. So this is what you're doing all this work for. Okay, let's do a little math. I know, nobody said there'd be math, but sometimes there's math. Let's assume you have, to use simple numbers, about a $10,000 monthly budget right now, and you're trying to reduce that budget to $5,000 for your full-time travel lifestyle. Well, that's not just your travel budget, because again, that's going to include all the ongoing costs you have once you leave the country. So this is where your economic footprint comes in. If you can reduce your economic footprint to zero, then you effectively have $5,000 a month to travel. If your economic footprint remains $3,000, then you only have $2,000 a month to travel, and that's obviously a huge difference and can dramatically affect your lifestyle. So we're going to talk a little bit more and show some numbers and really look at how this might work and the things you need to look at. So let's get somewhere that has less stairs and figure that out. Okay, fixed expenses. That's an important topic if you really want to understand how this math is going to work. So going back to the example we started before, you've got a $10,000 monthly expense now. You're trying to reduce that to a $5,000 monthly expense when you're traveling full time. First thing you need to do is figure out what makes up that $10,000 expense. You're going to have all kinds of discretionary expenses and all kinds of fixed expenses and things you can get rid of and things you can't get rid of. So this is going to be the first part of figuring out what your actually travel budget is going to be. Because again, if you want to travel for $5,000 a month, that doesn't mean you have $5,000 of expenses for your actual travels. You have to first subtract out all the fixed expenses that you can't leave behind. So for example, going back to your house, if your house costs you $4,000 per month and you can only rent it for $2,000 per month, you now have $2,000 of expenses that you're carrying forward. Same thing for your health insurance, your life insurance, your subscriptions, anything else that doesn't go away when you leave the country. Credit card fees. There's a lot of things. Everyone is going to have a different set of expenses. And people talk about getting their fixed expenses down to just a couple $100s. I'm not sure how that's possible, but certainly it isn't for us. We've got probably close to $2,000 of fixed expenses when you figure health insurance, life insurance, credit card fees, subscriptions. We still do YouTube TV. That's about $95 a month. Those things add up quickly. We've got several expensive credit cards. We're looking to reorganize that a little bit, maybe reduce some of those expenses, although we do get a lot of value in terms of points and miles for those, but it adds up. And so that's got to be your first exercise, is go through, figure out what your current expenses are, and most importantly, figure out which of your current expenses you realistically can get rid of and which of your current expenses you can't get rid of. And that's the downsizing process again. You got to stop thinking about it in terms of stuff and start thinking about it in terms of economic footprint. You're trying to downsize that economic footprint. So I guess that's about a wrap for this video. If you've done a downsizing process and you've got other tips and tricks, please leave them in the comments. It's a complicated process, it takes a long time, and it's certainly emotional. That's one thing we learned, is even if you think you don't want your stuff and you're happy to get rid of it, it still is emotional going through everything and figuring out how to get rid of the stuff you've had for 10, 20, 50 years. So thanks for watching, and please tune in next time.